Hey guys, welcome back. This will be the second build update for the Charge Dash build. I know last time I mentioned I was going to go to Flicker Strike, but so far I'm liking Charge Dash after moving from Elemental Overload to Crit. So I'm just gonna run through some of the upgrades I've made, a couple of like the big pointers, and maybe run through a map and just talk about just some of the general things about Charge Dash. So most of the gear is pretty much the same. Still haven't upgraded the flasks, which is just a matter of grabbing them off other characters, or spending the currency to do it, but haven't gotten there yet. But what I did do was spend about 5 exalts for this chest, which was a huge upgrade. It has big int, huge evasion, huge energy shield, so this alone adds a ton of survivability to the build. Though, realistically, there's two other good unique options that are a little less expensive. The more expensive one is like Soccer Walls or Soccer Walls Nest. It gives big stats, or at least big int, and reduces mana reservation, which helps with the auras. You probably don't need the level 4 Enlighten in that case. But so that one's a little bit more expensive on 6 links. When I say a little, it's quite expensive. But it does have a lot less evasion energy shield, so you'll feel probably like the 1500 or so less energy shield from using that chest. The other option, the one that I was originally potentially going to use, is just a Zeri Splendor with high evasion energy shield. So it has much higher flat energy shield than most chests, and still a good amount of evasion. So this ends up as a very good option. It also helps with your resist, which is usually kind of a struggle for this build, since a lot of your int stacking stuff is unique, at least at the start. So this is the probably recommended chest if you don't want to sink in a bunch of currency. You can either buy a 6-socketed one and try to 6-link it yourself, usually hitting a 5-link somewhere in there and holding that for a while, or buying a 6-link one. But realistically, they're probably going to end up about the same price I got this for, that like 5-ish EX spot. And I think this worked out because less people are int stacking in this league. Like deck stacking is a much bigger thing, and then people have transitioned off of tricksters, it looks like, and tricksters are the only real ones that want a super high evasion energy shield chest. So very few int stacking tricksters. A lot of other classes they're int stacking just want a big energy shield chest, or they're using something like the Ivory Tower, or what's the other one, like Incandescent Heart or something, the black armor and energy shield chest that gives you like a bunch of chaos damage, like percent of elemental damage is chaos damage, and then some percentage of damage taken was taken as chaos, which is great for CI. So that chest is excellent, but not as good as your trickster. So yeah, the chest was the huge one. This was the other big purchase. So Zeri's Reflection is just strictly better than Zeri's Mirror, because it has the 200 energy shield. And then Unaffected by Curses is huge. It opens up a lot of maps that we can now run, or comfortably run, as opposed to previously. There's a couple that are just more annoying because we have a hard time getting resist and are usually like right at the 75 mark. Elemental Weakness is annoying, and just like Vulnerability can give us some problems if the map also has like some crit multiplier mods or increased damage mods. Temp change is never fun to run, so I usually reroll those, but now with this it opens all that up. But otherwise it's the same. You end up seeing about 12 to 1500 energy shield equipping that. As you saw, it's about 1300. 1300 energy shield off of that flat 230 there. But really, if you can't afford this, its mirror is generally fine. Or the other option is just grabbing a high energy shield like titanium shield, and then you can get resist on that, or and resist, or whatever good mods you can get. So between these two items, and the reason I picked this up this league was every other league I've played this build, these have been going for somewhere like 15, anywhere between 13 and 17 exalts, and I've never had that much currency in a league, so it's just never been a possible purchase. But now this league, all of a sudden I got this for 7 exalts, which it was still a lot, but when I was thinking about it, like, this might be the only league I have the chance to buy one of these, so let's see how it works. And it's nice. Are there better upgrades to make? Probably so. Specifically looking at a few cluster jewels or different things, probably some better upgrades, but I did it, and it's nice. The extra handful of energy shield is nice. So between these two, you guys saw if you watched last video I had 15 exalts. So between these two, that was 12 of my exalts. I'm now on 1 exalt. So the other 2 exalts went into, I think one went into a cluster jewel, 1 I broke down for chaos. Maybe I broke down 2 for chaos, and then was trying to craft some cluster jewels. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit too, because that ended up being a real nice just currency saver, because a lot of these you buy for 10ish chaos, and then if you just hit specific mods, they'll go from anywhere between like 40 chaos to an exalt, depending on what they are. I had one that hit Precise Commander, and I was trying to hit Stalwart Commander, but I hit I don't know, some other one, and it ended up selling for an exalt. So that in turn went into trying to get a belt. So I'll maybe talk about that later. It's going to be too much though. So upgrades for the build, these 2 things were the big ones. Oh, I spent an exalt on this ring. So because I transitioned to crit, I wanted curse with Assassin's Mark rather than something like curse with elemental weakness on gloves or something. So I grabbed a ring that gave me some resist. Tier 1 or 2 int? Yeah, tier 1 int with attribute increase ends up with 61 int, which is great. This one also had lightning damage to attacks, and then I got to put energy shield on it. So really everything we could want on a ring. There's the potential to slam it or use Leo and Betrayal to get another exalt use on it, and hopefully hit like elemental damage with attacks, or something else maybe useful. So it was pretty nice. Really, the resist helped a lot. This ring is definitely replaceable, and I probably should at some point. Just something with better resist. I don't need the life at all, so really it's just a resist ring. So this is probably next on the chopping block, or next in line for upgrades. The other upgrade, and I might have mentioned it last time, is changing Vertex to just a high energy shield Huber circlet with either resist, or nearby enemies have negative lightning resist, and also plus int, maybe some more energy shield, and then getting the level 4 Enlighten, because right now it's level 3 with the +1 from Vertex. It ends up level 4, and that's all my mana. So So that would be spend 3 to 4 exalts for a level 4 Enlighten, spend probably an exalt or something on a good helm. I mean, honestly, they go for higher, but I'd probably try to just craft one. And then go from there. Other upgrades have been the jewels. So I think last time I didn't have any of this tree over here, this cluster set. And that's what I was working towards being at level 70. So I've got to level 84 now. And that opened up the 10-ish points I needed for this section. And ideally, I was trying to get a cluster jewel with Veteran Defender and Gladiatorial Combatant. Combatant gives you crit multiplier based on energy shield on your shield and melee damage per armor or evasion. So it would end up like a good chunk of damage, something like, I don't know, 30%-ish increased damage and 20%-ish increased crit multiplier, which is great. But those, unfortunately, were just selling for way too much. A jewel with 2 jewel sockets, Veteran Defender, and Gladiatorial Combat. I couldn't find one that was under an Exalt when I was looking, so Precise Retaliation, I just went for that. The 40% crit multiplier, if you've blocked recently, likely isn't going to happen. Part of the reason is our evasion's high, so we're only getting hit a fourth of the time. And then of those times, of that fourth of a time, we only block a fourth of the time. So 1 out of 16 hits triggers block, and just depending on how we move or how we're in combat, we're not really in a spot to take hits too often. So sometimes it's good. Usually it's just the crit chance, which is fine. The crit chance is fine, not great, but I ended up taking one here too. This cluster though, I want to talk about. So this is the new one. So this was something that I've been trying to theorycraft a little bit, because 8 is the tier 1 roll for intelligence on this cluster jewel, on a large cluster jewel. And then you can get increased effect. This has 25%, you can get up to 35%. So the thought was potentially you can get an add 12 passive jewels, passive skills jewel, and then have 35% and 8 intelligence, and then each point would be giving you 10 and 16% attack damage. So potentially these points are just worth way more than obviously any of your travel points, but way more than any of these, potentially more than a lot of what you're touching over here. But for now, I took them as they are. They're really good, but still went with the jewel sockets into these similar Precise Commander things. So Precise Commander is the ideal one. I took Stalwart to get the plus grace plus discipline effect, which is nice. Ideally I wanted that over here too, but crafting these I just ended up hitting first among equals, which is 10% increased effect, but it also applies to Herald of Thunder, and would apply to Wrath too if I was using Wrath instead of Grace. But I think Stalwart Commander's a little better. If I did switch to Wrath, so if I take Grace off, my evasion about halves, which really is only 10% greater chance to get hit, but the biggest drawback is the Trickster Ascendancy. When you get hit, you get 4% of your evasion as energy shield, so now instead of getting back 1%, so this would get you back 1,000, so you'd be getting back closer to 2,000 with Grace on, which just adds a lot of survivability. Maybe it's overkill, but for now I'm liking it. But that's always an option if the damage is feeling too lacking. The other thing I did here was use a small cluster jewel, get you some intelligence on the small point, but then get you elusive, which, because we're probably not getting too much more energy shield, I just wanted to stack more defensive layers, so the extra chance to dodge in there is pretty nice, and So far the 3 points seem worth it over one of these, but maybe in 4 levels I add this same exact setup here and just put the small jewel in it. All of these jewels in here have 2 crit multiplier things and then 2 other relevant stats, so the difference between having 3 crit multiplier affixes and 2 crit multiplier affixes is about an exalt each. So if I were to buy the same thing but instead of strength it and had another 15% multiplier, it would cost close to an exalt. I got this one for like 10 or 20 chaos. All these were about 10 to 20, and they all have stuff that I care about. 2 crit multiplier things. This one has some resist and then an attack damage. This one's some resist and attack speed. So decent jewels. This one's next on the cutting list, but right now it's giving like 40% total resist. So I need to get a better ring or get a helm that fills that to be able to replace this guy. I think that's most of it. Maybe this is new. The idea here is it just gives you a whole lot of strength, because every travel spot becomes 2 strength and every one of these is 4. And then I bought a random one and figured if I hit 2 or 3 relevant nodes, then I'd keep it. And this one I got 5% of fizz damage hit Stickiness Fire, which is nice. Another nice defensive thing. 10% increased Fortify effect. It's a nice defensive layer. Totem damage seems irrelevant, but ideally I'm putting in Ancestral, either Ancestral Protector or Ancestral War Chief to help single target damage, so this actually isn't a total waste. And then 20% melee damage is the third useful one. Stun duration doesn't really matter. And so those were the 5 notes I'd taken. Some of these, like if this would have had a relevant thing or a really good one, maybe like crit multiplier or something, it might have been worth the 2 points to grab it because it's an invasion energy shield, but it didn't, so it's not worth it. I think there's one other one in here that had something nice. Oh, crit chance. Like crit chance would have been a nice one too. Increased strength would have been fine. But really, like most of these, yeah, second fizz damage hit Stickiness Fire would have been cool. But most of these ended up not super stellar. I mean, there's a lot of increased strength, but they're just too far out of the way for me to even really consider them. These aren't bad nodes by any means, like crit chance, damage area of effect, and then the increased strength, but I feel like everything's so tight anyway, and I don't know what I would give up. Like, would these few be better than adding another medium cluster jewel into here and getting the big crit multiplier, crit chance, along with discipline and grace, given a bunch more energy shield evasion? Probably not. So, but that's something that I may play around with more in PoE, and if you're trying to do this build at all, I think is worth playing around with, especially if you're messing with timeless jewels. There just ends up being a lot of potentially good things. So that's most all the changes. I think maybe I didn't have this last time because it wasn't on crit, but Transcendent Flesh is, I think this also costed quite a few chaos, maybe an exalt, but I mean it gives you crit multiplier per unallocated strength, so over here it's 56%, which is great. I think I mentioned last time I've been doing a lot more trading this league. Loath Sliver. So, and the idea is I kind of hovered a lot of those cluster jewels that I had. So this is one of those that was trying to hit Precise Commander and Stalwart Commander, and ended up hitting Precise Commander, regaled it, and then got Purposeful Harbinger, which you can pretty easily search in PoE trade, and the minimum one of them is going for like 40 chaos. So I listed for 35. I bought the base jewel for 10. So it ends up just being like recouping your crafting currency. Like you spend a bunch of alts, you end up pinning something relevant, so you sell it off and then buy some more alts with that money, and then just start going again to try to hit what you want. So that's the idea there. I bought this jewel for relatively cheap, I found. It's the jewel that I want to replace this with. Being able to get Onslaught for just some extra move speed, I think gives a nice quality of life to charge dash. And then energy shield, lightning damage, crit multipliers, all stuff that I want. So that's all there. And I think that's probably about enough of the passive tree. Just this was something that I feel like, I don't want to say people have slept on, but could be really good for some of the stat stacking builds. If specifically if you're trying to do like, say you're doing a Juggernaut or Berserker that's trying to dex stack, obviously you're going to end up here with like these big dex nodes, but maybe traveling past here, like up into more of these dex areas, is too many points, or like you can't get enough. Throwing down like that cluster here over here and just having 12 points that all give you percent damage, like 16% damage and 10 dex, seems to be really good. Especially because that 10 dex is giving you the flat damage, and then you're getting 16% damage on top of it per point. And on top of that, you can get the jewels if you want them, and one notable. Like, it only takes up 2 of your affixes, and then all of these points become very efficient. So, something that I'm curious about. Maybe we'll theorycraft more, like try to fit into PoE and make a couple tests with it. But for now, I just noticed it, and it's worth looking into maybe. So last time, especially after I switched to the impulses, I ended up with something like 3,000 to 4,000 energy shield, which felt pretty poor. Maybe I was at like 4,600 with discipline on. So now I'm at 7,400. Feels much tankier. With the crit switching to crit, it's feeling a lot tankier. I've been doing higher tier maps, tier 15s, and so have felt pretty good. I don't want to say they feel great, because there's still once in a while I end up dying on them, but usually that's because they have like added damage as lightning or something, or added damage as elements, and crit multiplier, and I do delirium, and just end up getting like one shot by some pact or something. But I figured I'd run through one and just show kind of how the damage is, like how it plays. The playstyle is obviously going to be similar to the last one, but we can take a look at it. And actually, instead of this, I think I want to do a different one. I don't really care, but I want to quality up for the tier 15 ones, and then run it with the delve, either the delve mission, or if I've got a scarab that. I try to hit at least 75%. The curse is fine, extra damage is cold, and it's the one that I still don't have max resist on. It is a little sketchy. It'll probably be one where I just die to delirium, but we'll see. It'll be a good test. And obviously you'll see how slow I play, and there's just the potential I'm standing in stuff that maybe you wouldn't stand in, so maybe the build's even tankier than I'm giving it credit for. But you can see we're on tier 15. I mean, just alked, nothing too crazy, but stuff dies pretty nice. Like the yellow monsters die fine. Delirium guys die pretty fine. The boss damage, I need to get a Ancestral Totem, either War Chief or Protector, to help with the single target, I think. But once that happens, I'm pretty confident that the damage will be pretty respectable. Maybe nothing to write home about compared to some of these like Cyclone Impale builds, or I don't know, the Herald stacking crazy stuff that's going on with Guardian. I think I said the wrong class last time. But yeah, Herald stacking with Guardian that's been going on. So not quite to that status, obviously, but it's fun. I think it's worth the playstyle. That like sacrifice to damage a little bit to get this fun charge dash playstyle. The other thing, like I mentioned, the flasks are still on just whatever semi-bad things. So, oh boy. Yeah, I'm gonna just wait for Delirium to end, and then maybe he gets a little easier. So, staying in dots is less easy. I don't know why I'm not dealing damage to this guy. Maybe he regens during that phase, but sorry, I forgot what I was saying. But yeah, Delirium makes a few fights a little awkward, depending on what they are. Oh, I was talking about flasks. So I've still got the bad flasks, like I said. Not bad necessarily, but definitely not optimized. Wise Oak at minimum gives you the 15% pen. I think at series is definitely worth it. You get the extra chaos damage, since that's something we're lacking. Also gives us the leech, adds to survivability a touch. Vessel of Vinctar might be worth it. I'm not sure if pen or lightning damage is better offhand. Just something to plug into PoE. Obviously the Crypt Flask, whatever it's called, Bottled Faith, I think, something like that, is like the best for any crit build, but last I checked it was like tens of exalts, which is too much for me. Like, it makes me squeamish to spend the amount of exalts I did on my armor and shield, let alone like 20 exalts on a flask. Like, I don't get that much currency each league, so that's too much. Like, I'd rather just invest in a second character and have a whole nother build to play. But anyways, so yeah, that was basically it. Delirium, not the worst. Damage now is fairly respectable, but slaughter resist. I don't think it's good enough. But yeah, any questions again, feel free. I think I looked at some jug builds online that are doing instacking as well on Elemental Overload, and it's something on the cluster jewel with lightning damage. You can get supercharge, which lets you roll twice on your non-crit lightning damage, which I don't know if I talked about this last time, but lightning damage has that huge range. So let's say it's from 100 to 10,000. So if you get unlucky, you hit 100 like 3 times in a row, it looks like you're doing 0 damage. But then if you get lucky, you hit 10,000 a couple times and you're doing tons of damage. So then if you add crit into that and you're critting half the time, then the variance is just greater. So if you do non-crit, usually the trade-off is less variance, but some amount of less damage. But the variance matters more with lightning builds, And with Supercharge, you're not only decreasing your variance on that non-crit build, but it's also skewing your average damage higher, because instead of, say, 100 to 10,000, you get that like 5,500. Now your average will actually be closer to like 7,000. I think it ends up being like 2/3 the amount rather than half. So potentially that pushes the non-crit build into viability. So something that just might be worth it. And the reason I say that is because while the non-crit build's less damage, it's way easier to like not worry about Assassin's Mark. You get to go more defensive nodes rather than having to take all these crit ones here, and you don't have to worry about all these crit multiplier jewels, because really all of these points here are only there to get this good crit multiplier spot. So instead of doing all that, like investing these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 points to get this nice crit multiplier, you just invest in more defensive stuff. Like this is 20 int and some mana. Coming in here is real nice because 4% of max mana is energy shield. You end up with something like 2,000 mana, so 4% is a flat math is like 80. Energy shield is pretty big, and then these are efficient points for energy shield. So good thing. Same with this, like you don't need random points in here like that. You can invest more into like defensive things and cluster jewels, and you don't have to worry about precise commander. Instead of this, you can get the channeling medium cluster jewel, which lets you get the chance to gain endurance charges on hit, lets you get the immune to curses while you're channeling, so then you don't even have to worry about spending money on Aziri's reflection. You get those. And then you can also use this Paranda Signet ring and just get all unique items and just hit fat intelligence increase there, because it's 2% intelligence per equipped unique item. So you get these same ones. This guy, probably Vertex for the helmet's the cheap option. Aziri's Mirror, and then just use this Aziri's Splendor. It counts as unique for this ring. For your second ring, just try to get a ring that fills out your resist, and then all of a sudden you're good to go. All of your jewels that you have in here, rather than like needing to be all these crit multiplier things that I've got, you can make them all like this one. That's like a little bit of damage, or a little bit of, maybe not int, because these are probably all suffixes. So a little bit of damage or attack speed, and then just multiple resists on them. So that fills out your resist, and then you end up pretty good to go. One of the ways I pathed in a previous build was just removing all of these 8, and then instead of coming down the side here, coming along the inside this way, because again these are crit multi, so you don't need to worry about it. These become less important because this is just attack speed and damage that you pick up from other spots. So coming around here, picking up the useful like Fangs of the Viper, Cold Hearted Calculation, coming down this way, you get to put a Fertile Mind here, which gives you a bunch of int. You get to grab this that helps your resist, evasion, energy shield, everything you want. These end up good once you have Fertile Mind here. This is 20 int. This is 20 strength and int, and gives you mana and flash charges. Which if you do go this, you get the mana's nice. So there's just a bunch of vomited text really, but all that to say, the crit build's more expensive and more offensive focused. With Supercharge on a large cluster jewel, you can easily just go like Paranda Signet, all the unique items, Elemental Overload, and just deal with that. The upgrade would be put Curse with Elemental Weakness here, and then put like Wave of Conviction, Curse on Hit, Conductivity in a spot. You can even get the cast when damage taken, and then all those 3 in like a setup, and then if you do end up with Curse with LE weakness on gloves, you can get the Whispers of Doom pretty easily with this setup. So there's ways to make the non-crit version work and have respectable damage while still maintaining a high level of tankiness, and probably higher tankiness than this one's at. So don't let me talking about 7 exalts, 5 exalts worry you or like scare you away from this thing. This is like, I finally got currency, and these are like the best endgame things I could find. Well, in my opinion, things that I had looked at before and couldn't find. I think that's mostly it. If you have any questions about, how Charge Dash works, different cluster jewels to use, like I mentioned, I really want Precise Commander, but that's because it's crit multi. So there's a lot of options for medium cluster jewels. I honestly think Veteran Defender makes the shield cluster jewels one of the best. It contends with lightning damage and then supercharge. So go on lightning damage, supercharge, and then just one of the other ones. Even the prismatic heart that gives you more resist is nice. But this gives you everything you want. So that's pretty much it. I'll probably make one more update to this after I fill out my jewel sockets. I want a cast when damage taken Immortal Call setup. I want either cast when damage taken or just a self-cast Wave of Conviction to help with bosses. It's not going to have like a curse on hit conductivity because I'm using Assassin's Mark, but just something to add that little bit of DPS. And then I'll probably do a 4-link Ancestral War Chief, and rather than going, because you could set it up like more supportive, Ancestral Protector, which gives you attack speed, and then give it like blind Culling Strike and maybe a multi-totem, maybe something else. But instead of doing that, just doing Ancestral War Chief, damage on full life, ally attacks, and I don't know, either multi-totem or something else. So I think that's mostly what I've got left. If I end up getting a few more exalts, maybe I'll swap this out and that'll be the last update. 2 is just everything there, but odds are I just leave this how it is because this mask is perfectly good with the Evasion Energy Shield. Would just push my int a little bit higher, but this is enough for me. I think I hovered the belt in my cell tab I was trying to craft, so I hit the percent attributes to resist, energy shield, hit almost everything I wanted, but this is still just more attributes and percent damage of 5 the lowest, which my lowest is like 300, so that's what, like 60% increased damage. So that was a toss-up. Ideally, if you hit that tier 1 attributes that I hit, and then like a high level of int, so maybe the best way to craft it is with the whatever essence of spite, deafening essence of spite. But if you could hit that, that would be the dream. Like 55 int, 12% all attributes, and then using 20% increased attributes, which puts you to like 65 int, 14% attributes, which would just be obscene. But it looked like these were selling for quite a lot. Crystal belts with increased attributes and some resist. So I'll see if anyone buys it, probably give it a few days, and if not, maybe I'll just end up using it. I think that's about it though as far as an update goes. Again, any feedback, just let me know, or if or if you have any questions. I was surprised with how few charge dash characters there are. And then I think Mathel did either Pathfinder or Raider, so a lot of them that I've seen have been Raiders, and I just, like I said last time, I tried it and just wasn't a fan. Someone like Mathel can play the game with like 3,000 life and just dodge everything and do great. I just cannot. Even with the 7,000 life, like you guys probably saw it dip kind of low, and I'm just standing in the boss's AoE. But again, the high evasion makes it pretty forgiving, because most of the time he just misses, and like the big slams or whatever, and I get to get off scot-free. I think that's about it. So again, if you've watched this far, thank you, and if not, you're not here. So thanks for watching it all. Alright, see you guys.